All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where in the world you happen to be. My name is Christopher Harrison. This is Web Wednesday, the show where I bring on some really cool people to talk about various web dev technologies. And today we're going to take a look at React Native, which is sort of, I guess, like continuing a little bit of a theme that we've seen now for the last couple of weeks. First of all, focusing in on Atwood's law, which is that anything that can be written in JavaScript eventually will be. And React Native is certainly along those lines, because as we're going to see, you'll be able to create like mobile apps using React Native, using JavaScript, and using some of the tools that you're potentially already familiar with. But we're also continuing a theme and bringing on some really cool people from Infinite Red. And today, really pleased to be joined by Robin Heinze, who's been doing React Native for a fair bit. And Robin, thank you for joining.
So glad to be here. Thanks.
Glad to have you. So, I always like to start with this basic question, which is how did you get to be who you are? How did you become Robin Hines?
Well, I think I was born and my parents named me that, so that's really how that happened.
Okay, all right, cool. So,
But if you mean like Robin Hines in tech, that's a
yeah.
much longer story.
How
I
about
would
the short version of that story?
okay. So like growing up, I was sort of surrounded by people in tech. My dad did firmware for like security cameras and barcode readers. So he was like writing the code that told the hardware what to do. And then my brother, who is like a shining star, decided to go to Harvard and study computer science. So programming was kind of on a pedestal for me. Um, and so growing up, I was like, there's no way I'm smart enough for that. There's no way, like, I just couldn't see myself in that career. I mean, for starters, it was all boys.
Right.
Like I never saw any women doing programming or playing with computers, so it was hard to picture myself. And so most of my computer experience growing up was AOL Instant Messenger and eventually
Yep.
Facebook. Um, and so I like it hadn't even really occurred to me that that could like be my career someday. So I went to college. I picked a liberal arts college, which didn't have a computer science program because that was never the plan. And I ended up majoring in math because, like, despite not really being into computers, I was still a nerd and I loved puzzles, loved math, like all that good stuff. So majored in math. Um, and so I was exposed to code kind of like if you know what LaTeX is,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
which
That's
is a very like if you're in the math community, you definitely know what LaTeX is. It's a markup language for writing like mathematical formula in documents. So like anytime you write a math paper, you need to use LaTeX. So I was sort of exposed to code, but never really hooked me in until like my last year, final senior year. I needed another math credit. I took programming in C++ because why not? And I swear, I didn't enjoy like that is the first time I really enjoyed a class, and it's like the my favorite class up until that point, and like after that until I graduated. Like I had so much fun. I actually wanted to do my homework. I was like, "What? This is what this is what programming is? Or are you kidding? This is awesome." At that point, it was too late to get a CS degree, but I was like, "Oh, that's actually kind of cool." um, but so I like continued down the path I was on and ended up as an intern at a paper company. You can make Dunder Mifflin jokes. It was basically The Office. Um, it was actually a paper mill. I literally had to wear a high vis vest and like
oh
safety
wow.
goggles to get out of my car. It was pretty wild. But I was doing like business and like analysis. I was like making spreadsheets to tell like the business leaders like, hey, this is how you can make more money. Um, but then I got into macros. I was like, look at all this stuff you can do with Excel. You can like basically make entire programs
Mhm.
just like writing macros. I would like eventually like I was in charge of an entire tool that was based in Excel and would like talk to the database, the like paper mill database, and like forecast paper demands. It was wild, but it was super hard to debug. So I would get a phone
Right.
call. I would get a phone call in the morning and like the scheduler would be like, the tool's broken again. And so I knew what I was going to have to do for the whole day, which was like painstakingly go through like the code and figure out what was wrong. And I just knew like I wasn't writing good code and I didn't really know why it was bad or how to fix it because I like no one was there teaching me. I
Right.
was just kind of figuring it out myself. So that's when I was like, you know what? I want to do this for real. I want to go learn this for real. I want to go work for somewhere that is an actual tech company and not a paper company. So I quit. Uh, and I looked for how to learn how to code. And I looked into it's like, do I get a master's degree? Do I like go to community college? And then I found something called Dev Boot Camp,
Mhm.
which was in San Francisco. And I lived in Portland at the time and was in a new relationship, didn't really want to uproot my life. So I was like, I don't know how to make this work. Um, and then a brand new code school in Portland cropped up called Epicodus. And so I applied right away and I got in and it's almost kind of like the rest is history. I spent 4 months doing like learning how to build Ruby on Rails applications. We're
Mhm.
talking like 40 hours a week for 4 months. And my wonderful then boyfriend, now husband, paid the bills while I did that. I'm very
It's a
grateful for
good
that.
partner. It's a good
Yes,
partner. Yeah.
that was a very critical part of the process. So I spent 4 months doing that. They placed me in an internship, which then eventually hired me full time. And I after that, I basically just learned on the job. My coworkers had a lot to teach, um, and I ended up at Infinite Red doing React Native, and that's kind of the
And
story of Robin.
here you are today.
Here I am
Here
today
you today.
talking to you.
Yes. The low point now in your career, for which I apologize. By the way, you do have a lot of fans out in YouTube that are all saying hi.
Oh my goodness. I never thought I would have fans.
You have fans. You have fans. I do want to. I cannot think of her name. I was talking with Chloe Condon, who's one of my colleagues, about representation. You mentioned earlier that like you saw all boys and no girls
Hmm.
getting in and doing code. And Chloe had mentioned, and I need to figure out if I can find this. What was her name? But there was a chipmunk, cartoon chipmunk, the technical one.
A techno cartoon chipmunk. All I think of when I think of chipmunk is like the Ember JS mascot, which I
It was
swear I used to have a desk toy of, but I don't anymore.
gosh, I cannot think of her name now. But anyway, yeah. Chloe mentioned that. That was actually pretty much like her only role model growing up was this cartoon character because there's just nothing else that was
Yeah,
there, which
it
is
was
really
it
sad.
was sparse. I tell you, I used to sit in on uh it was like in high school it was like a programming elective, but I used to sit on as a teacher's aide, literally pulling out like hard drives from old computer towers. Like I would like watch what they were doing and be like, huh, that's kind of interesting. But like literally the whole classroom was all boys. And so it was like we need to get more girls into like those early years. Like
Yes.
especially like women teachers would be just like phenomenal because we need those role models for sure.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. TLDR, representation matters.
It really does. It really does.
All right. So no clean segue possible here. So I'm just going to hard switch here. Let's talk a little bit about React, and let's start with kind of the basic question of what is React, and the immediate like follow on to that from Mario would be why React.
So React. I mean, if you're in the web world, it's pretty hard not to sort of hear about React. It's kind of everywhere. It came on the scene 2013-ish, I think, is when it first went open source. But it's an approach to web programming that is very declarative and um, very much based on like state driving your UI changes. And it was pretty revolutionary at the time. I didn't get into web until pretty late, so React is kind of all I've ever done. So I don't have all the context from the people that were doing it pre-React uh, what what a big difference it made, but I know it's made a huge impact on the web community. Um, and then to move on to React Native, it appeared a few years later, um, uh, from Facebook, and it was built to be multi-platform instead of just web. So if you've ever done React, you know that you build UI blocks with JSX, which it looks like HTML. It's not really, but it's really only meant to render inside the browser. And so what React Native did was sort of abstract the UI layer into these really fundamental building blocks that pretty much every UI you would ever want to build uses, like view and image and text. And took these core components and then translated them into whatever native UI layer needed to be rendered. So
Okay.
for iOS, that would be like UI view, UI text view, etc. But you're only ever interacting with the React Native core components: view, text, image, scroll view, that kind of thing. So it really means you can build for any platform using the same UI or the same like API.
Okay. So it really then gives me that write once, run anywhere dream that we've been looking for.
Right, right. And
Okay.
like that particular phrasing has been a bit controversial because, oh yes, there are differences in the platforms that you need to account for, but really it's learn once, write
Okay.
anywhere.
Okay.
Because you really need to learn the React Native API, and you can build on a lot of different platforms.
Okay. All right. And I can then take all of those React skills that I have and then bring them into here.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's still very much React. The state management is very much React. What's changing is really the UI layer, the actual JSX.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Well, why don't we start taking a look at what a React Native application might look like?
Definitely. And so for what we're going to look at today, I'm actually going to go even one step further than React Native and talk about React Native Web as well. So we add an additional platform in there, in addition to iOS and Android. We're going to see how you can also build for web using the same code. So
Okay. Cool.
pretty excited. Let's see. All right. So the idea here is I'm going to go through the process of setting up a bare bones React Native app, get that running on iOS and Android, and then also set up a bare bones web application using React. And then I'll walk through how we add a layer of shared code, and then how we can use React Native Web to basically write the same code and run it on iOS, Android, and web. It's
I love
going to
it.
be pretty magical.
I like that.
At least I think so. I mean, I think most code is magic. So, okay. So, what we're going to start off doing is we're going to make a single directory, which I'm going to call a monorepo. There's probably more than one different approach to physically sharing the code. Like maybe you want to use an npm module or something like that. I've found the monorepo approach to be the most straightforward, especially for a simple setup like this. So that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm going to go ahead and make my mono repo directory. I'm going to call it Robin's demo because why? Why not? You should always name things after yourself.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And the first thing I'll do is go ahead and get the React Native app started because it takes a little bit to initialize. So I'm going to go ahead and run React Native init, which is going to bring in all of the boilerplate that you need for a bare bones React Native app. Looks like I'm going to call it mobile demo, and we're going to pass it the TypeScript template because I always use TypeScript and I love TypeScript. That's probably a different episode that we could go all down that rabbit hole, but TypeScript is awesome. You should use TypeScript if you get a chance.
Yes.
So yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I sadly don't use TypeScript near as often as I might like because I do a lot of demos, and a lot of times I'll do it in JavaScript just to avoid some of that little bit of translation that some people have to do because they're just not overly familiar with TypeScript. But like if we normalize this, if we start doing more demos in TypeScript, then maybe that will become more the standard.
I would love that. And honestly, I consider doing this demo in plain JavaScript. Like I talked about it with Jamin, my boss. And honestly, I prefer doing demos in TypeScript because it tells you what's wrong.
Yes.
Like if I leave out misname a variable or have a TypeScript is going to tell me, and I'm going to feel a lot more confident. So I actually prefer demoing in TypeScript.
Yes.
For those reasons. So okay, so that was actually pretty quick. Everything initialized. It actually does the extra steps of running Yarn and installing all your dependencies for you. So really, all I need to do now is just go ahead and run it. It's out of the box ready. So I'm going to cd into this app that we just created, and I'm going to run Yarn. Let's see, iOS and Yarn Android, and this is going to go ahead and kick off an iOS build and an Android build, which we should see pop up in our simulator and emulator pretty soon. But while that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and move over to the web side. So I'm going to go back up to the root of our mono repo, and I'm going to make another directory for our web app. And I'm going
Do you want to zoom in on that terminal real quick?
Yep. Here we go.
Perfect. Okay.
Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yep.
Perfect. Whoa. Gotta get I don't know where my other tab went. There we go. There we go. So I'm going to create a directory for my web application called web demo because that makes sense. Might as well name things.
I am just as creative with the naming of my demos as well.
It helps me not get lost if I name things that make sense.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm definitely in the web app because I named it web. That was smart of me. So yes, now we've created this directory. There's lots of different ways to create a new React app. There's actually a library called Create React App. It's a bit more complicated and a bit too configurable for our needs today. And so in order to keep things relatively simple, I'm just going to go ahead and build things more from scratch because you really don't need that much to make a React app, surprisingly. So I'm just going to make a few files, empty files for now. We have an index HTML file. We have a TSX file. And I'm going to have to add in some TypeScript configuration. So we'll go ahead and just create those empty files for now. And then I'm going to go ahead and run yarn init, and that's going to set this up as an npm package just so that I have a package JSON and I can install some dependencies. So let's see what dependencies we're going to add. We're going to start with our dev dependencies. We need Parcel Bundler is a web bundler. Yeah, it's if you've ever used Webpack, it does the same thing. It tends to be like I like Parcel a lot. It tends to be kind of like out of the box. It just works. So I've really liked using Parcel. And then we also need TypeScript. So I'm gonna go ahead and add those.
I agree completely with you on that. Like I use Parcel, I use Snowpack. Like I'm sorry, if I have to spend a half hour writing code just to get my code to build, like we've lost here. Like we've absolutely lost the plot if this is what we're doing.
Yeah, the app or the client app that I recently built using this strategy, we originally tried using Webpack, and like I lost at least a day, maybe two, just trying to get to like Webpack to be configured in a way that would work. And we'd like switch to Parcel, and I swear we got it working in half an hour. It was amazing.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I openly, I shouldn't say I refuse to learn Webpack, but I avoid it as much as I possibly can for exactly that reason.
Yeah. So yeah, Parcel all the way. This is actually still using Parcel 1. There is Parcel 2 out, but it's technically still in beta. And there's some kinks that need to be worked out that don't quite work with the strategy I'm going to use today. So we're still using Parcel 1, which I think works beautifully. And why change what works?
Absolutely.
So those are our dev dependencies. We're going to go ahead and add the building blocks of a React app. Necessary React and React DOM. You can't have a React app without those two things. And so let's go back actually and take a look at how our native apps are doing.
Oh, look.
Beautiful. So this is one of my favorite things about React Native is that it's so dang easy to start. Like you run one command to initialize it, and then you run another to build it, and out of the box, like look at this, you've already got code in your emulator and your simulator. It's amazing.
I love it. Where did you get the emulators?
So the iOS simulator comes with Xcode. So if you don't know what Xcode is, it's Apple's developer like software. It's absolutely massive. It's like 14 gigabytes of software, but it comes with the iOS simulators. And then the Android emulators come with Android Studio, which is what's used for building Android apps.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you still need to go get the emulator from other locations. Okay, that's right.
The React Native docs are really good about walking you through how to set up your environment. So it'll walk you through installing Xcode and installing Android Studio and all that good stuff. There's other dependencies like that you install through Homebrew, like Node, of course, and like Watchman. There's a few others, but the docs do a really great job walking you through how to get set up. And shameless plug, Infinite Red has a really nice course that walks you through all the various steps because it can get a little tricky in the configuration of Android Studio and making sure you have all the right environment variables and whatnot. So we have a really great free course that just walks you through that process.
Love it.
Right. So our two mobile apps are running, which is awesome. Now we need to get our web app running. So let's go ahead and open this up in our editor. This is big enough.
Hooray, Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, Visual Studio Code. Awesome editor. Highly recommend. Ever since when I did Rails, I think I used Vim for a while, which was a very strange time in my life. I wouldn't go back. I also used Sublime. And then as soon as I came to the React world, I started using VS Code because that's just like what everyone uses. And it's amazing. It's like super extensible. Lots of tooling. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not using VS Code, check it out.
I agree.
So this next bit, there's going to be some, let's call it the magic of television, where there's just going to be some code that appears, so you don't have to watch me type. But so this is our index.html that we created that was previously empty. We're just going to add the bare bones of what we need. It's literally just a body, a script tag that's going to pull in our TSX file, our JavaScript, and a div that's going to be where the React app will mount on the page. So that's
Nothing overly fancy there.
Nothing really fancy there. So then we're going to fill out our index TSX, and this is where React actually comes into play. So another magic of television moment. Just pretend I typed all that. So what we have here is like we're importing React, we're importing render from React DOM, and what we're putting on the page is this app component, which we define right here, which is pretty simple. It's just a div wrapped around a p tag with hello world, which can you get any more classic than that?
It's impossible to do an intro demo without doing hello world. It's against the law.
You just have to, right? So this is about as simple of a React app as you could get. And this it goes and searches for the root element, which we defined over here in our HTML. And it's theoretically going to put this div in that spot, and we'll see some text. So hopefully that works. Looks like TypeScript is yelling at us because I haven't put in any TypeScript configuration yet.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and pull over some configuration. For the purpose of this demo, it's not really important what we see here, but it makes TypeScript happy. No more red squigglies. I always love making those go away. It's really satisfying. So there's one last thing we need to do before we can actually build this thing. We need to add some scripts. So this is our package JSON. We're just going to add these scripts, little helper scripts. For telling Parcel to go ahead and build and serve up our app. And if everything is in my favor, we should be able to just run yarn start, which will start our server. Yep, looks like it built successfully. And then we're going to go ahead and load localhost 1234. And
sure enough,
yay, saying hello. Awesome. So where are we now? We have a React Native app running on iOS, Android. Perfect. We have a web app, admittedly a pretty simple web app, running in our browser, but they're not related to each other at all.
Right. And so right now we've got that React Native that's doing our mobile, and we've got React Web, and that's doing the web. And
right. But not related at all. But most companies, like you want a mobile presence and a web presence, and you kind of want them to have the same feel. You want them to have a lot of the same UI elements. You want them to look basically the same. So our goal is going to be set up a way to share code between these three platforms. These two platforms over here are obviously already sharing code, but share code between all three and have it run successfully on three very different platforms: web, Android, iOS. So let's go ahead and do that.
Let's do it. It is one of those things that always drives me crazy is you'll have, a web app and a mobile app for the same company, and they do different things, or they have like different sets of features that it drives me crazy.
Yeah, it can be super frustrating. And so that's why more and more companies are like, we don't want to write the same code twice. We don't want to have to manage like, okay, we fixed the bug on iOS. Now we need to go fix the bug on like web. You want to be able to fix the bug and have it be fixed everywhere. That's the dream, right? So let's go ahead and open up our mobile app in code as well.
I appreciate that the dream wasn't that there would just be bug-free code. It's just accepting the reality there will always be bugs.
Realistic dream.
We just want to be able to fix them once.
Yeah. That's like a fantasy world, right? No bugs. I wouldn't have a job if there were no bugs. That's pretty much what I do all day. All right. So what we're going to do first, this is our mobile app. We're going to create a new directory in the root called app. This would be where we put most of our source code. And then we're going to create a new folder inside, and we're going to call it shared. And I know I named it something random, but can you guess what's going to be inside the shared directory?
Something demo?
So what we're going to put inside shared is going to be the code that we're going to share. So
Ah,
probably components is a good thing to share. If you're not familiar with React, components are like the building block of a React app. It's one of the things that makes React so amazing is you can abstract your UI into these little things called components, which are shareable, and make your UI a lot more easy to port around, easy to understand. So yeah, they're the building blocks of a React app, and they're probably what we're going to end up wanting to share between a web app and our mobile app. Other things you may want to share, things like maybe utils or maybe theme, stuff that you want to be the same between all different versions of your app. So we created this shared directory. So how do we get it to actually be shared? I'm going to go ahead and copy this path really quick. The technique I'm going to use is actually like surprisingly simple. And sometimes like I question if like, how does this even work? Because it seems like it's too simple to work. But what I'm going to do is actually just create a symlink. So if you don't know what a symlink is, it's short for symbolic link. It just tells your operating system, hey, this folder over here, I want you to take that and mirror it in this other location. So two folders in two different places, but they have exactly the same content. And when you change stuff in one folder, it changes in the other. So that's what we're going to do. So over here, I'm going to create, this is my web application. At the root, I'm just going to create a directory called source. If you're wondering why I didn't call it app, there's not really any good reason except that I get lost really easily. And so this helps me know that I'm in the web application instead of the mobile. If I see SRC, cool, that's where I am. So it just helps me keep my bearings.
I do that. I get lost quite frequently because if you start playing around like Azure functions, every Azure function entry point by default is named index.ts
Yep.
or index.js, and so you'll have like 5 of those like in separate tabs all open in VS Code. Like, okay, which one is which?
Yep. We had some of that. I have some of that go on as well.
Yeah.
And I tend to like shy away from the it's called the bucket export method where you have an index file that exports everything in a certain folder, because I'm like, then I spend all my life with just like index files everywhere.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're gonna call it source. I think it's a bit of a convention on the web, I think, for it to use the name source. So we'll go with it. And then I'm going to go back to the terminal for a second. I'm going to need a new, there we go, new tab. I'm going to actually go ahead and create the symbolic link. So I do that with the ln command. I'm going to run ln-s. And here's the path to the shared directory that I created in our mobile app. And I'm going to link it to a shared directory in this source folder in our web app. So I go ahead and run that. And then if we go back to VS Code and we like reload. Yep. Now you can see this is our web app, and our shared directory has components, theme, and utils, which we obviously created over in the mobile app. So same folder, it's just a mirror. If you want to see even more evidence of that, I'm going to go ahead and create a file called counter, because we're going to create, that's what we're going to make. We're going to make a counter component. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that file. I'm going to add a comment just so we can make sure that the content looks the same. And then look over in the web side. And what do we have under here? We have counter, and it has the same content.
Voila.
It's pretty magical. So that's how we're going to physically share the code and have it be in both applications. But now we want to be able to write code that's going to be able to run in both applications. So that's really where React Native Web comes into play. So that's what we're going to install next. So let's go ahead and I'm going to kill the web server just because I'm going to be installing stuff and I want to make sure that gets restarted. And then I'm going to install React Native Web in this web application. So I'm going to do yarn add native web, and I'm also going to install some React Native types, just so TypeScript is happy. Okay, so we've installed that. The next piece is kind of the crux of how this whole strategy works. So I'm going to go back to my package.json. This is in the web app, and I'm going to add an alias. What this alias is going to do is anytime I write an import statement that is like importing something from React Native, like a view, text, image, whatever, it's actually going to go ahead and look in React Native Web.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that means that we can have like the identical code all the way up to the import statement. So it's going to say import from React Native, which means it'll work on the React Native app because React Native, and it will also work in the web app because it's going to secretly be looking in React Native Web. So
We don't have to tell anybody else. That'll just be our secret.
Right. Our secret. Okay. Right. So that's kind of the crux of how this whole thing works. So now comes the really fun part. We're going to actually build this component. And rather than make you watch me build a React component from scratch, we're going to bring in some more magic of television. Let's see. There we go. Magic of television. So, voila. A React Native component has appeared as if from nowhere. I'll kind of walk you through this a little bit. This is just a counter component. You can see from React Native, we've imported something called pressable, which is just like an area of the screen that can be pressed, and you can give it an action to run when it's pressed. We have style sheet, which is for defining our styles. We have text view. View style is a TypeScript type, just for typing. So if you're not a TypeScript user, you can safely ignore that. But what we have here is we just have a couple of buttons. So we have pressable wrapped around some text, and then each pressable is given an on press. You can see we have an increment action and we have a decrement action. So like one button increases the count, one decreases the count. And in order to keep track of the count, we're using what's called use state from React, which is a way to track local, like little bits of data in local state which is what updates the UI.
Okay. I like that syntax, the view, the pressable, the text, that like obviously it's not HTML, but like and this is also just partly an excuse for me to use one of my favorite words is onomatopoetically I can like figure out, oh okay, I know what's going on there.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I really like that. There was two real quick questions that I want to make sure I bubble up. Number one was alias, going back to your package.json. Is that something that's particular to Parcel, or is that like a Yarn thing, or is that been an NPM all my life and I just didn't know about it?
I believe this is a Parcel specific.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why Parcel worked so well for this architecture strategy is because it had this really cool alias feature. But yes, I believe this is a Parcel specific thing. Don't quote me on it. I'm like 90-something% sure about that. But yeah. I've
I
only
get
ever
that
used it.
exact same way, especially like when people start asking like what version something came to life, and like I don't know anymore. Like I've just been using it for so long, I just expect it to be there. I can't remember where it came from. I get that exact same way.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know. I just use it and it works.
The other question was, I want to scroll back up to it, is why you put the shared folder into the mobile app rather than into like a third location.
So that is a really excellent question. The reason for that is because the bundler for React Native, which is called Metro, is a bit more finicky about where things are. It's really difficult to put things outside of the main working directory and have Metro be able to find them. And it doesn't really like symlinks. So it worked best to put the folder in the mobile directory and then link it out for the web because Parcel was able to interpret that symlink correctly. And we kind of just want to not mess with Metro and just like make Metro think, hey, you're just a normal React Native app. Nothing funny going on here. So that's, yeah, really the reason is that Metro was a bit finicky.
Okay. That I love it. Yep.
Yeah, appeasing our technology overlords.
That is one of my big approaches. Is like, hey, you know what? I don't know why this works, but it works, so I'm just gonna keep doing it.
Exactly. One of the reasons why like this whole approach feels like almost too good to be true. I'm like, I can't believe this actually worked, but hey, we built an entire production app using this shared code strategy, so I'm not gonna knock it. Right. So yeah, so that this is our React Native component. But how do we get it to render on the screen? Because we still have this like welcome to React Native and this lovely hello world over here, but I want to see this counter that we just built. So I'm gonna have to import it. So let's start over on the mobile side. We're gonna open up app.tsx. This is what just comes with the React Native boilerplate.
How did you do that in VS Code? Like I know that's possible. Like I've seen other people do it, but I can never remember what's that shortcut key that you just did to open up that file.
That would be Command P.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I run that probably a million times a day. I don't even think I barely look at my the file directory browser anymore just because my apps get so big that I would be drilling for most of my day. So yeah, Command P, try it out.
Okay. I dig it.
So yeah, this is app.tsx. This is what comes with the React Native boilerplate. All of this code right here is what is powering this screen. So you have things like these are some reusable components, reload instructions, debug instructions. That's what's powering this screen. But we're gonna take it all out because we don't really want this boilerplate content. We want our own content. So I'm gonna go ahead and just delete some code. Who doesn't like doing that? Everyone likes to delete code, I think. And then TypeScript is going to go ahead and tell us all the rest of the stuff that we don't need. I'm going to take out this component up here. Whoa. Sorry, I'm not used to my font being so big. So like there's all this extra scrolling that it does. And so yeah, TypeScript is very helpfully telling us, hey, you're not using these things anymore. You can take them out.
I was talking once with the PM of TypeScript, and he said that he sometimes jokes part of his job is just making sure more red squigglies appear.
Right? I love like the red squiggles. Like
Yeah.
when they show up, you're like, hey, that's something for me to do or fix or whatever. And then making them go away is your whole goal.
Yep.
And it feels amazing when also VS Code does this really nice thing where it turns the file name red until you fix the TS errors, and it's so satisfying.
Yes.
When it turns back to green. Anyway. So we've removed all that content, and what we want to render instead is our counter component that we made. And we're going to import, actually, VS Code, again, helpfully imported it for me. Thank you, VS Code. And in order to make this look right, I'm going to just quickly add a flex style here, and I'm going to go ahead and add a prop to this scroll view called content container style and give it those same background styles. This is just to make sure that everything fills the whole screen.
Okay. And that import is basically just like importing like anything else, like a class or a method or an object
Yep.
from somewhere else.
Yep. We just so in the component file, we just exported it as a constant. Counter is just a function. Most like React components now are almost all just functions. So yeah, we're just exporting it and then importing it by name and then rendering it in our return.
Perfect.
So let's see. Whoa. There it is. The magic of live reload. As soon as I saved this file, our screen updated and you can see that we have our lovely counter component. It's simple, but it does the job. So that's the mobile side. So next we want to get it displaying in our web app. So I'm going to go into our index.tsx. This is where remember that really, really simple React code was living. But we're not going to use React DOM elements anymore. We're going to use React Native core components. So I'm going to go ahead and import view from React Native instead of that div, and I'm going to import text from React Native instead of that p tag. And just for good measure, I'm going to change what it says so you know. It's actually working. And I'm going to go ahead and restart our web server. And hopefully that turns green for me. Awesome. Love that feeling. As soon as I refresh, awesome.
Do me a favor, view the source on that. I would love to see like what that text gets converted into.
Yes. So it's actually mostly just putting in divs. So
okay.
And this. Yeah. So it's converting those React Native core components into HTML. So in this case, it's a div nested inside another div.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but we don't really want it to say this is rendered using React Native Web. We want it to look like our iOS and Android apps. So let's go ahead and put in our shared counter component instead of this text. So I'm going to import, I don't know if no. So we're going to import it. This time we're going to import it from the web shared components counter. And I'm going to add some styles just to make sure. Define our styles first. So we're going to do similar to what we had in the counter component itself. We're just going to use a React Native style sheet. We're going to import that from React Native. And we're going to define a container style and give it a width of 100% and height of 100%. Don't come at me, designers. This is just a demo. And we're going to go ahead and pass that style into that purview.
And now start sizing everything specifically with pixels. Just
make
everybody start yelling and complaining.
Okay. So so is it going to make me restart the server? We were just talking before this that it's not a live demo unless something goes wrong.
Honestly, if this is all that goes wrong, I would call that a win. Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. So now we have this is really zoomed in. That's why it's so big. We have Android, we have iOS, and we have web, all rendering the same component.
I dig it.
And if we go ahead and like, if I want to go make a design change or fix a bug or something, let's say the designer all of a sudden wants the background color to be like green. I don't know why they would want that, but um, all I have to do is change it one place. Oh, there we go. Android and web. Change it one place. Oh, come on. Why are you doing this to me?
Because you have to.
I probably have to do this again. Um, yep. So you can change it one place and you've just updated all of your different platforms.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
so awesome. That's so awesome. So now I've got that one shared code base that I can then use
Mhm.
across everything.
Obviously, it's not, so it's never going to be 100% shared.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't think that dream will ever exist just because there's things that have to be different. Like navigation on the web is very, very different than navigation in mobile apps. And so you're going to have to like handle navigation in your web apps separately from your mobile apps. But it allows you to, especially with React components and their portability, it allows you to define a lot of your UI in little shareable chunks that you then only have to write once, which is really powerful.
I really like that. I really like that. And then also it just it and this is honestly like this is the first I've ever seen of React Native in general, and it feels relatively natural to me as a web developer that
Mm-hmm.
as I was saying earlier, like I can sort of see what's going on in that, even though I don't necessarily know exactly what it is that all of those things do, but the names are relatively straightforward.
It's very much React Native is very much easier for web developers to move into than it would be for native native iOS developers or native Android developers. It's so much more similar to web development that it allows previous like what people who are previously web programmers to move into building native apps very easily,
I dig
which
that.
is one of the beautiful things about React Native.
So and we've got just a few minutes left, but I'm curious about this because you mentioned it earlier about having to deal with differences between iOS versus Android
Mm-hmm.
in React Native. Like, what are some of the things that I need to be aware of in targeting those two different platforms with React Native? That you talked already about, like dealing with things like navigation and so forth in the web is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
But what's then going to be different between iOS and Android?
So there's a number of things. For the most part, you can get quite a lot of overlap, but there's small differences. Like if you were to open up the React Native docs and just sort of read through the different components, you'll see that there are different properties on things like scroll view or image or whatever. There are different properties that may say, "Oh, this is iOS only, this is Android only," because the underlying native API is slightly different and they may do different things. Some of like the most obvious differences are like Android doesn't really do drop shadows. So it's really hard to add shadows to elements in Android where it's super easy on iOS. Those are the kinds of things that'll show up. Uh, but for the most part, React Native has done a really good job of um, sort of what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think
Abstracting
of the word.
away
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like abstracting away a lot of those differences so that the API, the React native API that you're interacting with works on both platforms, like maybe 95% of the time.
Okay. So then would it be safe to say that for, a lot of applications that I'd be writing, that I'd be able to get away with that write once and it will run the same then on iOS and Android, and that it would be when I try to start to do maybe like a little bit more advanced things that things are going to start to get a little bit different.
Absolutely. I would say
Okay.
the majority of the applications we build at Infinite Red for our clients, I I don't have to do I don't have to like dip down into native or write any conditional code for iOS versus Android. Like 95% of the code is
Okay.
completely 100% like write once, run anywhere. Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I dig that. Cool. All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to show us?
Um, I think that was pretty much it. Really quick, just to like to touch on that last point that we were talking about. On platform differences, it's really easy to sort of diverge if you need to. So for example, say like, oh, web has so much more real estate than iOS and than like mobile apps do, and I want this counter to be like twice the size. It's really easy just to add a conditional statement using this what's called the platform API from React Native. So I can write this statement called platform select, and I can say, okay, on web, I want this to be 200, and everywhere else, I want this to be 100. Whoa. And that platform comes straight from React Native. Um, and so like it's that easy to just change the size based on what platform it's running on. And now if I don't know why it keeps making me restart the server, but
Again, if that's the only thing that went
that's the
wrong,
only thing.
let's call that
Right.
a win.
I'm okay with it. Yeah. So you can see it's like it's that easy just to diverge in the little places that you need to diverge without having to say like, oh, well, this one thing is different. I'm gonna have to like write the component just for web. You can like add in little bits of conditional logic like that. So yeah,
I
that's.
dig that.
Mhm.
That is really cool. Well, thank you so much for walking us through all of that. That was like really neat to see. I'm through and through a web developer. Like I played around with Xamarin for about like a week and a half, only long enough to realize that it's not really kind of where I want to be.
Yeah.
So I've been like hearing about this. So being able to like see this and see all of this brought together was really cool. Really cool. I definitely dug that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm always excited to spread the React Native love. It's definitely been a joy to work with this community for the last 4 or 5 years now. And yeah, just like sharing a really great way to write mobile apps.
I love it. Cool. Well, where can people find you?
I am at Robin underscore Heinze on Twitter, just my name with an underscore in the middle. And you can always hear me on the React Native Radio podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Just search for React Native Radio.
Love it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Robin. You should definitely go check out the chat on YouTube when you get a minute. There was just it was a lot of fun in there, and basically just TLDR. Everybody loves you, so
Awesome.
definitely go check that out when you need a minute. But yeah, so thank you for coming on. Thank you for showing us React Native. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. That is Web Wednesday. We're here every Web Wednesday talking about something that is web related and bringing on some really cool people. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you again to Robin, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday or Thursday.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.